Let's take a look now at the three major cloud service models: public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. Well, let's begin by looking at public cloud and talking about the characteristics here. Well, to begin with, this is the most common deployment model of cloud today. We'll learn more about private in a little bit, but public cloud generally is where people go. They say, hey, I want to start using cloud services. I can go to AWS or Microsoft Azure and immediately start leveraging public cloud. Azure, AWS, GCP are all examples of public cloud providers, and everything runs on your cloud provider's hardware. So essentially, they provide the services, you put the apps and the data on top of them, but it runs on their hardware in their data centers. The advantages and disadvantages of public cloud are as follows. Advantages: highly scalable, highly agile. Essentially, they're providing all that resource power, compute power, storage power. You can tap into it very, very quickly. Pay-as-you-go pricing. You pay only for what you use, no capex costs. Now, you can do commitments. You'll learn more about reserved instances and other savings plans. So if you can commit to a cloud provider, you can get even cheaper pricing. However, pay-as-you-go pricing is something that's very attractive about it because you can try something out, experiment, and then decide if you're going to keep it for the long haul. You're not responsible for maintenance or updates of the hardware. I know a lot of IT engineers love this. They don't have to go do all the firmware updates or the power, the cooling of the data center, etc. That's all taken care of for you. Minimal technical knowledge is required to get started. You can take a course such as this, get up and running, play around with little risk to yourself. Just make sure to not overspend. Make sure you know what you're using. But generally speaking, minimal technical knowledge to have a playground essentially ready for you to go versus having to get a data center, power cooling, rack stack server, or buying home labs, all those kind of things. Disadvantages, though, there may be specific security requirements that just cannot be met by using public cloud. Most of those have gone away in recent years, but still some outliers out there. There may be government policies, industry standards, or legal requirements which public clouds cannot meet. And perhaps in some cases also, you just have to have data closer to other services because you've still got a data center and you haven't been able to move everything off to public cloud yet. You don't own the hardware is one disadvantage there, so you can't control the specific knobs and levers that you can turn when you, say, put your own servers in your data center, your own storage arrays. You have more flexibility there. Last but not least, unique business requirements may just impact your ability to consume. Perhaps they don't have the service you need at the right performance, for example. Shifting gears now, let's take a look at private cloud. And this is all about on-premises in our data center. We would create a cloud-like environment in our own data center. This means we're responsible for the hardware and software services that we wish to provide to our consumers, except instead of us going to Azure and consuming directly, we're creating everything and providing it up. Now, there is a difference with just a data center and private cloud. In order for it to be considered private cloud, we need to have a lot of the same characteristics that we see in Microsoft Azure. We have self-service. We can go to a portal and click and request something. Automation, all the services spin up automatically. There's not a lot of manual intervention. Agility and financial transparency are absolutely key here. And let's look at some of these advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of private cloud: complete control over those resources so we can support legacy scenarios. Perhaps we've got an application that just isn't yet compatible with public cloud services. Complete security control. We control access to the data center itself because we control the real estate and all the hardware in there. We may be able to meet strict compliance requirements. Public cloud cannot, although that's starting to go away. Public cloud is starting to meet all the regulatory frameworks that are out there. Disadvantages, though: large upfront costs. Just think about the investment to set up a private cloud. Not only do we have to buy the building, the real estate, the power, the cooling, the servers, but we also have the software investment, the automation investment to create that cloud-like experience, just as the hyperscalers like Microsoft Azure are doing. And there's a high skill set required. It's very difficult to create a private cloud. You need a lot of people, a lot of skills, and a lot of experience to do it. Owning equipment adds a lag into the provisioning process. It's not just about, hey, I can go get a server. The resources have to be there. The compute, the storage, etc. have to be ready for somebody to consume. And that brings into question data center management. Who's managing the data center? The power, the cooling. It's a very, very hot day. If power goes out, we've got to deal with all those things when we manage our own data center and a private cloud. Well, What about hybrid cloud? You probably heard this term floating around a lot. Well, this essentially combines public and private clouds. You could say it allows the most flexibility to run in the most appropriate location. You consume public cloud services as needed and potentially keep your legacy workloads running on premises. One way to think about this is, maybe I've got automated virtual machines on premises. I'm going to keep running those workloads out there, and I leverage modern services in public cloud. That way, I don't have too big of a lift in terms of skills on premises that I already may have. Instead of building a whole private cloud, perhaps I just automate some core services. Advantages, flexibility, because now I can provision to public cloud or on premises. My consumers have options. Support for legacy systems while enabling that modern application development so that we can move to public cloud successfully. And we can continue to use our own equipment and investments. Perhaps we've already spent a lot of money on servers in the data center. Well, let's exhaust those servers when they're due for refresh. Maybe that's the time to move to public cloud. Disadvantages, again, because of the private cloud components, it is complicated to maintain and set up. A lot of flexibility, but now we're offering services in multiple locations, and we need to have standards and procedures around all of those. It can be more expensive than simply selecting one model. And that goes without saying. Again, we're maintaining two setups. Well, let's compare all of these side by side. Public cloud, no capital expenditure to scale up. Applications can be quickly provisioned, deprovisioned. Organizations pay only for what they use. Private, hardware must be purchased for startup and maintenance. Organizations, though, have complete control over resources and security, but they are responsible for hardware maintenance and updates. And hybrid cloud, most flexibility. Organizations determine where to run their applications on private or public. They control security, compliance, or legal requirements. So the future generally, when I talk to most enterprises, is hybrid is the future. They'll use a mix of Azure and things like Azure Stack and Azure Arc that you'll learn about as well, which allow for those hybrid scenarios and easier management on premises.